open up and today's conversation by talking to us a bit more about the kind of acceptance of Kier Starmer by the Jewish community, who play a big role in London and in the UK's political life. I think they're beginning to warm to Kier Starmer. What's the news story on it? I think it's in the Guardian today.
Well, the community had always warmed to Kier Starmer. It wasn't a question of changing a stance or a stand. And while we're at it, to all our Jewish friends, may they rejoice on this feast of unleavened bread, which is forthcoming, and happy Passover.
Happy Passover, yeah.
Happy Holy Week for the Catholic and Protestant communities.
Yes. And to us Orthodox as well.
Greek Orthodox and Orthodox in general for next week.
Yeah.
He's always been on the right footing. He's always been upright and correct towards all the communities, so this is no surprise. What is surprising perhaps is that he put in first gear and that he wants to complete everything or have it up and running by the end of the week.
Yeah.
Which it seems as if he had to prove something. He doesn't have to prove anything. And we all know that Labour and all parties that sometimes alienate their members, and the members leave, and then circumstances change, and alienated, aggrieved members return, and this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, but how does the Labour Party win over, the Jewish vote? Because I read some horrific stories of, stuff that just, really was unacceptable within the Labour Party. How does the Labour Party, how did the Jewish community become more comfortable and friendly again with Labour? I mean, what does Kier Starmer have to do to start really winning back seats that are traditionally Labour and traditionally strongly backed by the Jewish community?
Well, what his promise is, wherever there's a grievance and it is presented and the paperwork is there and the email tracing is there, they will look into it, address the issue, confront the people who have shown to trespass specific moral standards, and no doubt expel members who have been particularly unpleasant towards other Labour members. I think it's a very straightforward how he's done it. He's always shown his support. There's no room for any form of racism in the Labour Party. Never has been.
Yeah.
Never will be.
Yeah.
And the exceptions will be dealt with, and members will be expelled.
Yeah. So there's a statement here by Mike Katz, chairman of the Jewish Labour Movement, praising the steps that Starmer proposes to take. While we would have fully understood the need to focus entirely on coronavirus at the time, Kier Starmer has already achieved in 4 days more than his predecessor in 4 years in addressing anti-Semitism within the Labour Party. So that is a big approval. I mean, that's a big thumbs up already by a leading member of the Jewish community, and that's something to be applauded. And then Starmer thanking the Jewish community who came and met him, wishing them wishes for Passover. And then he said, today I repeated once again the apology I made as soon as I was elected leader. Over the last few years, we have failed the Jewish community on anti-Semitism. So that is pretty resounding. I mean, once that acceptance is there, I think that is when the Jewish community has to start saying, this guy means business. He really does accept the flaws that happened before, and he wants to work with us. I mean, that should be the sign that they all want to start building bridges again. Can we move on to a story that was in the Daily Mail about a Labour mayor that was kicked out of the party after saying Boris Johnson completely deserves intensive care coronavirus?
I misunderstood that.
Yeah. So,
because when I first saw it,
yeah.
completely deserves intensive care, I thought, perhaps some people were arguing against Boris Johnson being given intensive care. And I thought, of course he deserves intensive care.
Yeah.
He has to be looked after. He's the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And then by the responses, I thought there must be another context in which this statement was made. And I think how the mayor meant it is that I think the mayor seems to have said he deserved to have been ill. I think that's what
the quote was, sorry, he completely deserves this, and he is one of the worst PMs we've ever had.
Exactly.
So that's a really, really unnecessary and tactless comment. I mean, look, you and I,
no one deserves coronavirus.
No one deserves it.
Everybody deserves
absolutely
healthy.
Yeah.
Everybody deserves to be looked after.
Yeah. I mean, I've had major question marks about Boris Johnson, right? I was on the other side of the debate in Europe, and I've questioned him about, like everyone else has, but in no way do I wish anything ill. I want him to have a full recovery. I want him to get back to work, to lead the country. And why would a woman who is elected as well, mayor of where's she from? She's in, is it Derby or Derbyshire? Say such a reckless and irresponsible thing, and Labour did the right thing by they've expelled her from the party. So that again underlines
the whip, is as good as expelled.
But that shows that Kier Starmer is on it straight away. He knows that these are the kind of things that everyone wanted Jeremy Corbyn to be doing, and Kier Starmer is cleaning up the house. He's doing his housework. He's doing his housekeeping. He's getting his house in order, because these little things are what matter. Local politics is what everyone sees on a daily basis. I
think any member, including Jeremy Corbyn, would have condemned such a statement.
You had Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, also wishing a swift recovery to Boris Johnson,
his predecessor, in fact.
Yeah, his predecessor. So so there is a unity amongst the political leaders and the parties, mostly wanting Boris to come back.
Can I say? Sorry. Do you remember? I mean, perhaps everybody may have forgotten that there's a third party, and we've never heard about this third party at all, because you just said all the parties.
Yeah.
What on earth happened to the Lib Dems?
Yeah, they've disappeared, haven't they? Who's the lead? Who's their leader now? Who is it?
I think they have a temporary one.
Right.
They haven't officially elected one.
Right.
No,
they've absolutely lost it. I mean, they've lost the. I think since they had that opportunity when Nick Clegg was the leader, their leader.
Yes.
And I think they just got it wrong with Cameron. They just went along with policies that were against their natural kind of instincts, just to be in power. And the tuition fees issue. And locally they've disappeared. They were in North London. They were rampant. They were absolutely everywhere, and they were making gains, and they were the big threat. And so. Moving on to our next story, in City AM, one of the great works in the city, the daily newspaper that everyone should try and read. Headline: a new leader might give Labour the Labour Party a chance. So it's an op-ed by Christian May. It's saying, for anyone holding out for some exciting non-virus news, this week brings a treat: the result of Labour's leadership election. Having suffered a catastrophic drubbing in mid-December, the first Saturday in April will see a new leader of the opposition crowned, which has been done already. So whoever wins, picking a new leader will be the easy bit. Starmer is better positioned, it's saying, this is an old article, but positioned to untangle the party from the web of hard left ideology that has held it back for so long.
There's one thing which I find utterly objectionable in this article.
Yeah.
And where the author writes, Corbyn will return to obscurity if he ever left it. That is offensive.
Yeah.
That's utterly offensive to the people whom he has defended in North London before he became a leader. There's two sides to Corbyn.
Mm.
Up to the point where he became the leader of the Labour Party, and before that. Before that, it's because people like Corbyn gave a voice and fought for the political equality of Cypriot, Turkish and Greek, of West Indians, of Irish.
Yeah.
He said, you have the right to vote. You can vote. You can stand up for election. You can put your name forward. Your voices can be heard.
Yeah.
And this was completely unfashionable. And to be fair, this was echoed as well in quarters of the Conservative Party, who saw the need for the equality amongst all the communities. So for this author to write that he will return to obscurity, I demand here, so to speak, to express the right Corbyn has given me as an equal British citizen to say she's absolutely, utterly wrong and she should withdraw that statement.
Mm.
If we wish to talk about Corbyn since he became leader of the Labour Party, that's a different issue.
Yeah.
And there are issues there.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Con, I think
Kier Starmer will.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the point was that Jeremy Corbyn should never have been elected leader of the Labour Party. The man is a man who's got beliefs, he's got his convictions, he's got his ideologies, but they're not ideologies and beliefs that are electable in this country, right? So that, I think, was the basic issue. The guy, you and I known Jeremy Corbyn. I remember him in Holloway, in Islington. The man works tirelessly for his constituency. I've never seen anyone. I was a kid, and I remember him walking up and down Holloway Road, meeting all the business, the Cypriot factories, and meeting everybody at the Cypriot Community Centre. The man, no one can touch him. The man has been there, on it, writing letters for people, doing stuff, working endless hours for people. You can't. No one touches that. The thing that
3 weeks before he was elected, I went to an anti-racist meeting which he chaired at Islington Town Hall. When everything finished, I approached him and I said, would he be running? It's a shame, I said, that you're not running for Mayor of London. And his answer was, I'm not about to run for anything, let alone leader of the Labour Party.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really on his horizon to lead anything in particular.
Mm.
It was sprung on him. The shoes didn't fit, unfortunately.
I think the Labour Party has, like a lot of the left-wing parties across Europe, and again, Syriza is a really good example. Okay. They went from I forgot the guy's name before, Tsipras, the guy who set up Syriza initially, and then Tsipras took. I forgot his name now. Anyway, so Tsipras was an opportunistic, very clever in terms of politician. Alavanos, that's the guy, right? And I think Alavanos was duped into handing over the reins to Tsipras. Tsipras then brought in his people, he got it right at the time, got the mood right in Greece, and then won two elections he won. He galvanized that sentiment in Greece. Corbyn, with his people, Paul Mason and all these people behind him, were trying to copy what Tsipras had done and other left-wing leaders in Europe. But the UK is not Greece. The UK traditionally and historically has never been a hard left country. There are pockets of it, but this country does not swallow or accept the kind of indoctrinated left-wing socialist policies which are written down and which are now taking place anyway. The mass nationalization of industries, the pumping of public sector money, which is now having to happen, the propping up of the NHS, which is all of Corbyn's and the left wing have been saying this for years, are now happening. But when you try and thrust that upon your middle managers, your middle class guys who are, they've got their nice little holidays, they get their bonuses, who don't want to be taxed to the hills, and I'm comfortable, thank you very much. But now when that comfort is all upside down, they're now reappraising the left wing. They're starting to say, well, 1 minute, how wrong was Corbyn? How wrong were the left wing?
It's interesting that Corbyn came on the crest of Brexit and on the crest of Grexit.
Yes.
So
yes.
There was very fervent times, and where the left, the more left had a strong voice. I remember seeing Corbyn repeatedly in leading marches against the measures taken against Greece with the Troika and the debt management. He was right up there, Corbyn. He was a speaker. He was a contributor to the debate.
Yeah.
So that's why Brexit, it brought up these elements. Now that Grexit is history, now that Brexit is again history, new figures are emerging.
But how does the Labour Party now position itself in this crisis? I think we've spoken about this before, to become a government in waiting. How does it reposition itself to win back key parts of the economy, key parts of the country that it's lost, particularly in the north? Because those 109 seats that the Conservatives won from traditional Labour supporters are, have to be number one priority for Kier Starmer. How do you win back those northern constituencies? And a Blairite agenda isn't going to do it.
No.
So he's now got to think, what do I do to get back those seats from the Conservatives? Because they should never, ever have been lost to the Tories. The Tories wouldn't in their wildest dreams be thinking about winning over those constituencies. So he's got to get to grips with, once this coronavirus thing is over, he's got to then come up with an economic plan that's going to be dealing with huge amounts of recession, huge amounts of economic deprivation, a higher education system,
major inequalities.
So all of these things, he's got to get spokespeople that are really on their game, who really come up with clear proposals. And because the Tories are now, this is a really, honestly, being in government now is, I wouldn't have thought of anything worse at the moment. There is nothing worse than having to work in a kind of government environment. I wouldn't, honestly. To have to deal with those everyday, there's huge job losses. There's going to be massive downsizing across every industry. There'll be, NHS to the max. Their resources are maxed. So Labour has to deal with all these things. What do you think should be their kind of 2 or 3 big priorities in government, in opposition?
I think they have a natural seat, a natural constituency, which is a soft patriotic nationalisation. And by that I mean they are the natural defenders of the NHS. They're the natural defenders of a more equal pay. They are the natural defenders of having utilities more in our control. And they would also be the natural defenders of local produce, not to depend so much on imports, especially regarding food. And they're also natural defenders of education, state education. How do they present all this? That was, as you pointed out, how will their spokespeople present this, and what policies? How will they fine-tune those policies?
I mean, surely, Constantine, at the moment, the big thing is, the big issue that's going to be on the minds of many is employment, is jobs, because there's going to be a huge amount of cuts across the private sector over the short to mid-term. So the public sector there has to come in and hoover up some of those vacancies they've got. So now the opportunity is, I mean, the government's going to have to do this anyway, but the opposition have to come up with big idea projects to create employment, and those are going to be infrastructure, those are going to be housing, those are going to, building, the northern powerhouse the Tories keep talking about. How do they
private rents?
Yeah, exactly.
Which are running rampant.
Yeah, so building a lot more houses for people, so that they can absorb the vacancies and the unemployed in the building industry. That it looks as though it's going to be affected heavily by the crisis. But what does Kier Starmer? What should Kier Starmer's big vision politics be about? I mean, that's the thing that a lot of his advisors are going to have to sit down and really think about and say, what are we going to? I mean, the HS2 project, is major. Is in major jeopardy. I don't think it's going to happen with all this stuff. Well, I mean, with all this stuff going on, so. I mean, how are the government going to finance it?
Exactly.
You're going to have, and already you're seeing it across higher education, all the universities now in panic mode because they're going to lose massive amounts of income from international students, from the absence of the domestic students. So there's going to be a lot of failures.
Research funding from Europe has disappeared.
Right.
Erasmus.
Yeah, so we're out of that. So the thing is, how does a party in opposition bridge the gap, that the vacuum and the kind of the desire by people to see a way out of this? Because the Tories are now going to have to come up with some big ideas. They're borrowing a lot of money. They're going to have to prop up small businesses. The self-employed are going to struggle, and these are all natural Tory voters.
There was, before this, and it was on the books, that a lot of big private companies, private enterprises, wanted to shed much of their personnel, and they couldn't actually do it. This has happened now because of coronavirus and because of the collapse of areas of business and enterprise. How will the unions react? How will the unions respond? How will the unions defend the right of people who have lost their jobs to return to those positions? And how will Kier Starmer negotiate with the unions? From what I've seen, huge chunks of trade unions are behind him. So we can't anticipate major confrontations there.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Okay, so moving on to our kind of final discussion point, the current situation with the Prime Minister and Dominic Raab now kind of becoming our de facto leader.
Our temporary de facto leader.
Temporary de facto leader, if that exists.
Because if you listen to Michael Gove,
yeah,
I think I could hear Michael Gove say, me too, I want to be leader.
Yeah. So what was printed in the Telegraph this morning, and what I read, was that Heseltine and John Major were querying what the exact powers were for Dominic Raab, because he's not a deputy prime minister. He, what are his areas of competence? Where does it stop and start? And and at what point do we kind of say, right, Boris, you're incapable of leading the government because of your ill health? What does that, does it mean an election? Do we have a new prime minister thrusted on us without being elected? What's your viewpoint?
I think, well, if the worst comes to the worst, the Conservative Party can select a new leader.
Yeah,
you can say, and I hope it never reaches that point. I wish Boris Johnson to get healthy and return to 10 Downing Street and to receive the criticism that he deserves. Yeah, that's what many of us, most of us, if not all of us, wish for. But there's the system, with or without a prime minister, Britain, the United Kingdom, can function. You have a cabinet that can take decisions in certain specific areas. You have a civil service that knows its mandate, that knows the workings of the country. And as we said previously, Italy didn't have a government for God knows how many years. Yes, Italy functioned as a country because of local, because of regional powers which the country has. I don't see the problem. What would be a problem if there is internecine fighting within the Conservative Party?
That's the thing.
Who will replace him?
Yeah, because the jockeying for grace and favor will start happening now. I mean, even in a crisis, these are politicians. They're
Exactly.
they're not interested in.
Exactly.
I mean, they say they're driven by the national interest and about the crisis, but they're all going to be looking at column inches, about opinion polls, about how they're perceived and all this kind of stuff. And Boris Johnson appointed all of these people himself personally, so he, it brings up another issue, that these are all Boris's appointed cabinet members, so they're all loyal. They're all loyal to him. So at least he's got
but not necessarily to each other.
Good point. That's it. They're not necessarily loyal to each other. So, yeah. Okay.
I've noticed one thing which stands out to me is how Hancock and Raab have suddenly aged.
And also really lost their if they had some mojo, it's all gone. The happiness has gone out of them. The joy of it's now the horrible stuff that politics is about. It's the crisis. It's the all the the stress, the tension is there on a day by day basis. That this government,
and I think that their memoirs will be very interesting.
They will be.
And I wish them all the best. Because they really are going through a tough time.
This is a difficult time, and all the advisors who work for them, and the permanent secretaries who work within the ministries as well. These guys are going home, and they're not sleeping. It's a highly stressed environment.
Have you worked this one out? Are they working from home, or do they actually go to the office, to the ministries?
I mean, look, the contacts that I've got within Whitehall are the ones who are kind of at the front line working, as SPADs, who are working directly with the ministers, are as much as possible going into Whitehall. But all of the press staff, the comms people, they're doing it remotely. They're working from home as much as possible. But if you're working at number 10, you're going to have to go. You're going to have to go in and work and do whatever you need to do from there. I mean, a lot of these, at the MOD or the big ministries who run a kind of a crisis management rooms, and they do all that kind of stuff. They have people going in. So it's not an easy time for people working in Whitehall. My thoughts go out actually to the journalists, a lot of the media who are working in the national papers, who are doing, who are lobby correspondents. You can see them outside of College Green and number 10. These are not easy jobs to do at the moment. Sky News and all these 24-hour news channels, they're all having to, put themselves at risk by doing these press conferences.
I'm starved of what is happening in Birmingham, what's happening in Berwick, what's happening in Cardiff, what's happening in Hull, what is happening at grassroots level there, what is happening in those councils. I wish there was more reporting. That suddenly we speak about a national problem. I want to know what's happening to the rest of the nation, rather than everybody being focused around the lobby and around, as I think Alistair Campbell pointed out, as much as he likes and he wants to see, as much as he wants to see Boris Johnson get better, up and running, he feels that too much emphasis is given on his illness rather than on the wider issues that have been brought on by coronavirus.
I think you're absolutely correct. I think you're right. I think there's been too much play about the health of the Prime Minister rather than looking at the.
Yes.
I mean, how many are we looking at? Around 5,000 deaths in the UK now? Is that where we're at? I think we're at that kind of number now. So the United States are reporting around 10,000 deaths, and Italy.
We know someone who died, unfortunately.
Oh, sorry to hear that. So it's
from a VEC.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. So it is a problem that is now a crisis that's affecting everybody, and the papers are all kind of focusing on, rightly or wrongly, the health and state of the Prime Minister, and we just have to follow the news at the moment and see what's going on. Constantine, thank you very much for your contribution this morning. We'll speak to you again tomorrow. Keep healthy and well, and we'll speak again very soon. Okay.
All the best.
Thank you.
Best.
So that was Constantine Buhayer giving us his take on today's news. We're gonna take a small break, and we'll be back with a World Bank economist, Elena Banariti, giving us her take on the situation in the Eurogroup and what seems to be happening across Europe, that the EU consensus is breaking down day by day.